Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Daily Fulham podcast. This is your home of all things Fulham. And today we are continuing our build-up to the weekend's game as Fulham play host to Wolves. With that being said, this is our crossover episode. So allow me to give a warm welcome from the Daily Wolves team. We have Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
Hello there. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm anxious for the weekend, like everyone, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks. I'm surviving the snow. We've had snow the last couple of days. I'm cold.
Yes, it's feeling very wintry all of a sudden at the minute with the very cold temperatures we are getting. So we are just coming off the bat. Well, it's coming to an end now, isn't it? The international break. And I don't know how you feel about this. Seemed like it's been a bit stop-start so far, hasn't it? With 3 international breaks in the space of 3 months. And I don't know, are you happy to see the back of the international break? Or as a Wolves fan this season, do you look forward to the international breaks?
There's been points when they've helped us, I think, at times. But as a football fan in general, I think, yeah, there's too many. And we've had this discussion on our own podcast. I think the next one's not till, is it March now or something? Thank heavens, it's much further away. But yeah, ironically, this last one is the one that I think has come at the worst time for us, having gone on a little mini run of 3 games unbeaten and then finally getting a win. And just as we got the first win of the season, we've now we've gone into an international break when arguably that morale would have been at the best point to then come and play you guys. So I'm sure we'll get further into that, but it's a little bit sad for us that we had a break.
Yeah, I was saying this before. It never seems to come at the ideal time, because if you've lost a game, you just want to get another game out of the way as soon as possible to get that winning feeling. And if you're like Fulham, where you've had back-to-back wins, you just want to carry on the momentum. It kind of kills it. The only ideal scenario for an international break to come is if you're riddled with loads of injuries and you've got the possibility of those players coming back. But yeah, it's exciting for all football fans now. We can just look forward to the Premier League, cutting thrust of that. No international breaks now until March. Let's just focus on Wolves. And then you managed to secure that elusive win in the last game against Southampton. How big was that? How much was a relief as the seasons go on and the results continue to not go your way? And, you know, Ipswich subsequently managed to get a win on the board. So every Premier League team has now secured 3 points. How much of a relief was it to finally get that win against Southampton?
Yeah, huge relief. It's ironic that, yeah, the teams around us are obviously also getting points at the same time. But overall, huge relief. You can see it in the players. The squad really needed it. The fans really needed it, but you can see the relief at the final whistle amongst the players. They've obviously been underperforming at times, but also just a mixture of bad luck or like one person making, a huge error here and there. And you can see, though, it's the way we've fallen behind in games and then got deeper and deeper defending, trying to hold on to leads when we've had them. And you can just see it in the general play. The play's got more anxious over the last few weeks as they've been desperate to get points. So hopefully there is a sense of a little bit of relief and they can carry some of that morale. It would have been nice to keep that going if we hadn't had the break. But I'm happy. There was a lot of pressure on the manager to get something from that, to win that game against Southampton. I think if we hadn't won that game against Southampton, there's already an uproar for people saying that they want Gary O'Neill to move on as a percentage of the fans, not everyone, but some that want Gary O'Neill to move on and a replacement found. I think that win has obviously bought him time. Otherwise this international break would have been a chance to make a change, in that gap. But the win has, on the back of 2 draws before that, has probably bought him a few more weeks.
So just on the manager's situation there, do you think if things didn't go to plan against Southampton, if it was maybe even a draw, that he wouldn't be in charge for this upcoming game?
Yeah, I think potentially so. It is debatable. Ironically, the club gave him an extension in the summer, having been one of the lowest paid managers last season after doing well with us last season. And obviously kind of protecting their asset, because at that point a lot of other clubs were interested in a young, interesting English manager. But and then it's not all gone to plan, and there's a part of them obviously don't want to let him go. But yeah, I think especially if we'd lost that game, then yeah, I think he would have been gone.
And what is the sort of consensus amongst the general fan base? You're never going to get 100% either way, 100% backing for Gary O'Neill. You'll always have those dissenting voices. So what's the atmosphere, I guess, been at games? Have they backed the manager all the way, or are there people that are getting a bit tense and and the anxiety being there because of the league position and potentially wanting a change?
It's been, like you say, it's a percentage, but at points a large percentage. And there has been, considering, I think for a long time, Wolves fans in general are fairly supportive and loyal, and knowing that we opened with a really strong, like tough opening set of fixtures, there was a lot of leeway given. You know, you look at, it was well spoken of in the press that we had the toughest open of anyone. You know, we opened against Arsenal. We've played all of the top six, I think, in the first 8 games. And so it's been an incredibly tough run in playing, you know, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. Like, you can reel them off. We played all the top few teams. So there was a lot of leeway given. But then as it's gone on, and then we've played some teams and that we should have got more points from and haven't. There was a few boos at the Crystal Palace game due to some of the and more than when we lost the game away to Brentford, there was boos from the away fans. And when you're getting boos from the away fans at Wolves, the away contingent are the, you know, arguably the most loud and loyal. You know, they're the ones paying their money to travel across the country and will give everything away from home. And when they're booing the subs away at Brentford because of the situation there, you know that you've lost a percentage of them quite heavily. So yeah, it's definitely been a kind of walking on eggshells sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you've had steady finishes the last couple of seasons of 13th and 14th. We remember prior to that the sort of glory days, I guess, under Nuno, 7th place finishes, doing well in Europe. Were you anticipating a relegation scrap before a ball had been kicked this season?
No, not at all. That's the ironic thing. We've been very optimistic in the summer. You know, after last season, we were for a period pushing towards the European spots, then decimated by injuries in the last few games. You know, in that losing run, we basically were playing under 21s up front because we had no senior players. So it was kind of, at that point, it was when everyone was like, yeah, it's okay, because, you know, he couldn't help it. But and then in the summer, yes, we lost a couple of big signings in the likes of Neto and Kilman, but there was still a sense that there was a lot of strength in the squad, and some of the players that we brought in, whilst not replacing necessarily those players, because there was a lot of fans saying that we did need another centre-back, and we do, to make up for the loss of Kilman. But we brought in a lot of other wingers. We brought in another great midfielder in the likes of Andre, for a Brazilian midfielder international. Like, we've got, I've mentioned it a few times on our other episodes, but if you look at our squad overall, you know, the spine of the team, there's 3 Brazilian internationals, the likes of Cunha, João Gomez, we've got Andre, you've got some experience in the back with the likes of Craig Dawson, and we've got a Portuguese international in goal. You know, the spine of the squad is really strong, and overall, actually, the starting 11 is pretty solid, and there's some players there that we're getting to a bunch of teams. Cunha particularly would probably get into any team right now. And so the hopes in the summer we were going to push on top half, you know, at least not be in a battle for sure at the relegation end, and hopefully be pushing to the top half of the table. And then it's just gone all to pot, quite frankly.
Yeah, there is one player that you mentioned that I just want to pick up on, because he has been linked with Fulham. Fulham fans will know the name Andre because he's been linked with them seemingly for every single transfer window for the last 3 or 4 seasons. So it looked at some points that he was going to come to Fulham, but it never came to pass. Maybe Marco Silva just didn't give that green light in the end, and he ended up going to Wolves, didn't he? And I know he started okay. I think his first game, he had some record stat, wasn't it, about completed passes, but I noticed he's been out of the team the last few games. What's the story there then?
So I think that there is the story that lies in with the confusion with the fans' confusion with Gary O'Neill in trying to fit, because he came in, did amazingly, Andre, I mean, and got some unprecedented record of like 40 odd passes on his debut with no, like, every pass was completed, and it's been fantastic. And he won the fans player of the month in his first month with Wolves. So everyone was seeing the quality, and then he's not been in the lineup, and it would seem as if that Gary O'Neill doesn't quite know where to put him and how to make use of the player. He wants to play a certain way. It feels like he's trying to fit the players into the formation he wants, and not necessarily match the formation to the players that he's got. So it's like a square pegs in round holes sometimes, because he really wants to play a certain way, like he wants his 4 at the back, and he wants to do certain things. But now he's got a variety of amazing holding midfield. You got Mario Lemina, João Gomez, Andre, those three alone, and he's trying to play them all at once, and they don't necessarily work all at once because they've got a lot of similarities. So then trying to mix in Tommy Doyle into there, who we bought from Man City, and then deciding how many players he wants up front in the likes of whether we go, 3 up front or like a 4-2-3-1 or whatever it is. I think he's just confused about where to fit Andre. He didn't necessarily. I think the club bought him because at that point it was this is a great value and we can get him, and we're now becoming one of those selling clubs where we buy someone who's got this potential to be good for a couple of seasons and then make us a massive profit, and that's the goal at Wolves, I think, at the moment. But I think the manager is struggling to know how to fit all of the cogs, and it's like, just play the players in the places they're good. That will make us happy. But he's not necessarily doing that. And that was a bit of a ramble. And I hope that kind of, makes some kind of formation of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to touch on, which you said in passing there, was about Wolves' run of fixtures. They did have a difficult start to the season. They were playing a lot of the big boys, a lot of the teams that finished high up in the league last season and are continuing to do well at the start of this season. Now I can see, looking at your fixtures, weekend game, of course, is going to be a tough game going to Craven Cottage because Fulham are full of confidence. But after that, you've got likes of Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich and Leicester. Do you feel like this could potentially be, even though it's November, December, be a season-defining month?
Yeah. Again, we've spoken about it a lot on Daily Wolves that this period, November to December, this is now our season very much in terms of what's happened with the first half, with being before that win, we were 4 or 5 points adrift at the bottom of the table, and that win has now put us within 1 point adrift. But so this make or break period, like you say, we're playing the likes of Ipswich, Bournemouth, yourselves, and Everton are in this period, which again is huge. So this is the section of our season now after this horrendous start where we have to get the points. We have to climb the table. This is make or break, and it's make or break for the team. It's make or break for Gary O'Neill. It's like, this is it. This period will probably decide a big part of what goes on in January.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think the saving grace for those teams that have struggled to win, that have only mustered one win, is the fact that there's been other teams as well that have struggled to get wins. So you put Ipswich, Southampton, Crystal Palace, Wolves in the same ballpark. No one's detached at this stage of the season, so one win, you're back out of it. So there's every chance they're looking at those fixtures up until Christmas that Wolves can get points and get themselves out of it, and maybe start looking higher up in the table and towards mid-table. It does represent an interesting clash on the weekend. There are some old faces, previously of Wolves, that will be coming up against. Raul Jimenez, talk to me about Raul Jimenez. How do you remember his time at Wolves? Obviously, initially he came in and he was scoring a lot of goals, wasn't he? And they had that terrible, well-known head injury, and then subsequently he wasn't firing after that. What are your memories from him at his time at Molineux?
Yeah, I mean, legend. He is, he's a huge part of that brilliant period that you spoke about when we got into, seventh twice, and he was scoring some absolutely amazing goals for us and doing well in Europe. And at that point, at his peak, I mean, there were some big clubs, again, linked with him that he could have gone for a ridiculous amount of money at that time. Then sadly, a horrific head injury. I mean, absolutely devastating. And to be honest, just to see him at one point, it was just a case of to even see him walking and then running and even to playing again is just a miracle. No one thought he would get back to the level he's at. And there is a part of me that is very sad. Not part of me. I am very sad he left the way he did. It was kind of felt at the time that, we were in difficult circumstances when Lopetegui came in, to kind of save us the season before last, and he was kind of frozen out of the squad at that point. Yes, he was still you could argue he's still recovering. It was only a couple of years after that horrific head injury, and still recovering his sense of being, and knowing that it was his last contract and he was going to go that summer, and knowing he was on the bench for the final home game of the season and he didn't get to come on and say farewell to the fans, that it really felt like how do I put this? Yeah, Lopetegui just did him a bit of a harsh one there, and you could see he and his family were in tears that day because Wolverhampton was a big part of his experience in England at that point, and the fans loved him, and he didn't get, he didn't get his swan song that a lot of people wanted him to have. And so I am so happy to see him doing well now, to see him being reborn into something of his former self, because that was we just never thought that would happen, and we didn't see that. It didn't look like his old self for a long time at Wolves, which is why he eventually got moved on. But I am also absolutely petrified, therefore, that he's going to score against us.
Yeah, I was thinking, how do you think Wolves fans would react to a Raul Jimenez winning goal set up by Adama Traore?
Oh yeah. That thing that's given me nightmares, to be honest, and it's going to happen, because that's what happens to Wolves. Like that's just written in the stars. I'm sure it is, but yeah. I love him. I want him to do well, just not against us, please.
Yeah, before we come on to more of a chat around Fulham, I just want to echo what you said about Raul Jimenez, about his career being revitalised. I think there were stages during his spell at Fulham, even though he's been here for just over a season, that it looked like people were writing him off. Muniz came into the team second half of last season and was scoring every week, and then Jimenez didn't start the campaign because Muniz was the guy in possession of that position, but he was struggling to find the back of the net, and Jimenez got his chance. Was scoring on a regular basis, and even when he hasn't been scoring goals, he's been contributing to the team. So, at 33 years old, he's still banging in the goals for Mexico as well. He scored away on international duty. So, hopefully for Fulham fans, that can continue going forward for the rest of the season. Before we come on to more chat around Fulham, let me just tell you all about our sponsors here at GSPN, and that is Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So,
I will
Chris,
say, on a lighter note, sorry, I met Jimenez a few times during his spell in Wolverhampton. He's a lovely, lovely guy. Yes, I do wish him all the best. He's a great guy.
That's great to hear. So, Chris, then, are you looking forward to this fixture, or are you slightly nervous, concerned, given the way Fulham have been performing?
It's a mixture. Looking forward to is probably the wrong phrase. I am quietly hopeful that, given, as I said, this kind of hopefully putting a what's the phrase I'm looking for, but we've maybe stemmed the tide slightly, having two good, well, I won't say two good draws, but one good draw, like the 2-2 away to Brighton was a good result, coming from 2-0 down as well, and then the draw against Palace, and then a win against Southampton. I'm hoping that is giving a glimmer of hope to maybe, getting something. I'd be happy if we get a point away from Fulham, because I feel like that, like you mentioned, you guys have been on form. You're having a good start to the season. I think so. A point for us would be massive at this stage of the season, going into some of these bigger games we spoke about from our point of view, in terms of like Everton and Ipswich and everyone. So I am quietly hopeful, and yet at the same time, I am dreading it and anxious, and it's just worried it's all going to go wrong.
Yeah. From a Fulham perspective, it's exciting times. Back-to-back wins, back-to-back London derby wins, 7th in the table. And if you look at the table, there's only, I think, 4 points between third place and, is it 13th and 14th? Man United down in 14th. So it's really congested, which you don't often see at this stage of the season. Normally, certain teams are separated, but it's only been Liverpool and Manchester City have separated themselves from the rest. So everything's going to plan at the minute. And I saw a stat earlier that was, I don't know how much attention you pay to XG for, XG against, but it gives you an idea of how sort of games pan out. And Fulham, after the opening loss on the first day of the season against Manchester United, they've actually won XG in every single game. So that'd be a word of warning to you Wolves fans and that's against good teams in there as well. Man City at the Etihad, for instance, they played Aston Villa in there as well. So Fulham, despite being 7th, sitting pretty in the league, I think a lot of fans will be actually feeling, do you know what, they've chucked away a lot of points, because I think they've dropped 10 points from winning positions. And a couple of those games in particular, the Everton game at Goodison was a 95th minute equaliser. West Ham game at home, where they battered them, was a 95th minute equaliser. So it's going really good, as well as any fan could have hoped for, especially maybe with the loss of Polina in the summer, which is often talked about, and how they were able to replace that. But I think it's been a dream start, really.
Yeah. As I say, I'm a little bit scared because you have looked solid. So I am anxious. I am anxious, but I'm gonna stay quietly positive at the same time. It's a weird concoction being a Wolves fan. It's always tense.
What do you think the Wolves' approach will be going into this game?
To be honest, I think, well, for the first part of the season, Gary Neal tried to play this 4 at the back that he did all pre-season. He's very much wanted to do that. However, some of the recent points have been gained with a shift to 5 at the back, like we did last season when it wasn't quite working. And I think bit away from home, that's probably the safest way to go, because we look a lot more solid with the 3 centre backs, and then Semedo and Aït-Nouri at wing back. It allows Aït-Nouri to roam because he's so dangerous at that when he's got the security of another defender behind him. However, a big part of that, and you may have been coming onto it, is going to come down to the health of our centre backs, because we're carrying a few knocks there, which is actually the only silver lining of this break. But because we lost a couple of defenders, Mosquera got an ACL injury in the 3rd or 4th game of the season, so we've only got a few healthy senior centre backs. And so if we play the back 3, it's actually then a young under 21 on the bench, because that's all we've got. But one of our seniors, Santiago Bueno, pulled out of the Uruguayan squad during the international break due to injury and is a doubt for the weekend. So our formation will depend on injuries. It will depend on how many senior centre backs are fit. We are that short at the back. So
and I actually think Craig Dawson, he does add a lot to the Wolves team. I mean, you watch him far more regularly than I do, but I always kind of felt he's sort of an underrated, underappreciated centre half, and he's got that experience, know-how of the division. He's been in relegation scraps as well. I mean, in his time at West Brom, he would have been at West Ham as well. So I think he's probably a key figure. And they do. Is Lamina? He's the captain, isn't he?
Lamina's captain. We call Dawson Ballon Dawson because he is amazing. And I mean, when we've played the likes of Man City the last couple of seasons, the way we play against them with that 5, he is usually assigned to Haaland, has marked Haaland out of the game basically every time we've played him, because Haaland is that big kind of old school in a way player that just likes to use his strength, and Dawson just likes that battle and likes to be in his face and just completely marks him out of the game. He's hardly had a sniff each time. So because when he's got the back 3, Dawson hasn't got the legs. He's never had much pace anyway, but now he's in his 30s and he's lost some of the speed that he did have. Having at the back 3 means he can be in the centre and use his experience to shepherd everyone around and make us just that bit more secure. But if we end up in a back 4, then he hasn't got the pace, and then we're going to be more susceptible. It's going to be a little bit more risky.
Yeah. So having looked at Wolves' defence there, I mean, the statistics don't lie. They do say that you have conceded 27 goals in 11 Premier League games, which is the most of any side in the Premier League. What do you tend to put that down to?
Set pieces. If you get a set piece against us, whether it be a corner, an indirect free kick, whatever, whether it's the first phase or the second phase of a set piece, that is literally where nearly all of those goals have come from. We are actually really solid defending from open play. And if you look back through the matches, even against the likes of Man City and Newcastle and everyone, they have hardly had any chances from inside the box. They've been shooting from distance and had very little sniff of goal from open play. We're actually really solid as a formation when the ball is in play. But once someone gets a set piece and that ball gets whipped into the box, it's schoolboy defending. Everything is going wrong. And the ironic thing is they hired a set piece coach in the summer for the first time ever at Wolves. And he's been sacked within the first 6 games or so because it was just all going wrong. And if you look at the game against Chelsea where he's conceded 6, 3 of those goals are identical. They look like a replay of the same goal because there is no one on the far post, and it's just it's every time. There is no one ever marking. There's always a free man, and it's usually an opponent's centre back. Most of the goals against us have come from opposing teams' centre backs who are just not being marked at set pieces and being left to just head in freely. And as a Wolves, that is what's driving Wolves fans crazy right now, because as you've seen, we're actually scoring plenty. We've scored 16 or 18 goals or something, and we look dangerous going forward. We've got some great attackers, and from open play, as I say, we're solid. Get a set piece and you've won the game.
Well, it's funny you say that actually, because I believe Fulham are the only team in the Premier League that haven't scored from a free kick or a corner this season.
Oh, it's
So
going to change.
it might be Wolves' lucky day on Saturday. I think there's this statistic that comes out every week that Andreas Pereira has created more chances than any other player. 99% of them are free kicks or corners that people just head over the bar, and I think they've had over 100 corners without without a lead into a goal. So maybe the luck might change against Wolves with what you're
Oh
saying
yeah.
there.
I hate to say it, but it will it will change because we are, unless something magical has happened during this international break, we cannot defend them. To the point I've been saying, let's just go 80s, early 90s, put one on each post, put a defender on each post, do old school. I don't care. Just put them on the line, put everyone on the line until the ball is clear.
Absolutely. Before we look at some key personnel and give our score predictions, let me tell you all about GSPN. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasts with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily wrap-up broadcast in 5 different languages. It's your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. So, what are the major personnel changes? Maybe is everyone come back fit from international duty?
Um, I mean, it's mainly focused. Can't talk properly today. It's mainly focused, as I say, around our centre backs because Bueno's got a knock. Dawson's been carrying a knock through the last 2 games, and if we had more centre backs, apparently he wouldn't have been playing. He's been carrying nursing a hamstring or something through those last 2 games. So it's really down to those centre back formations up front. And midfield looks pretty solid, and we have depth there, so that's not really a concern. So I reckon if there's enough fit people, you'll see either a 5-3-3 or like 5 and then 2 holding midfielders and then the 3 up front. But as long as Cunha's playing, as long as Strand Larsen's playing, there's goals. We're capable of scoring. It's really just whether we can we can score more than we concede.
Is Hwang Yi-Chang still out injured then? Because I know he had a good season last season. Didn't he have a dozen goals? Hasn't sort of hit the heights. But I was just wondering, do you know about his fitness?
He's returned to, I believe he's returned to training now. Yeah, he got picked up a knock. He's been out for a few weeks. He's back training now, so he is a possibility for the weekend, maybe to be back on the bench. But I'd very much doubt he'll start, even if he's back. And yeah, he last season at one point he was absolutely flying, and he is a fox in the box very much. I think he's one of our best finishers, and if he gets the ball in the box, he's capable of putting it away. The weird thing was he was in double digits, went away to the the Asian Cup or something last season. Never came back from it the same. Got injured during it, but also just there was a lot of rumors about how the South Korean squad did that time, and I think it was Klinsmann, was it? And there was a lot of disgruntled stuff about their fitness, and he came back, didn't look the same player. Then he's picked up injuries, and he's never quite been the same since he was on that goal scoring streak. And a lot of people were actually happy to have him out of the squad for a bit because a lot of people were booing as well when Gary Neville kept putting him on and he was not doing anything because he's been played despite not performing. And so I hate to say it, but it's been a little bit nice to have some variety in the squad while he's been out. But I secretly love him. I think you know what you're going to get. He's every manager's favorite. He's always played under every manager that comes in, and like he's a workhorse because I think they know what they'll get, even if he's not. He must do it in training because he doesn't always do it on the pitch, but they like him.
Yeah, well, coming on to the Fulham team news, it's a bit more simpler for Marco Silva. I said this in the preview show that he's a manager that's reluctant to change his side when it's winning, when it's enjoying good times. And Sasa Lukic was actually one of their best players. He got injured on the last international break. Up to that point, he was arguably Fulham's best player as that sort of replacement for João Palhinha, who goes about his business quite understated and lets the more talented players, more creative flair players, allows them to do what they do best. He does the sort of dirty work that often gets unnoticed maybe by just casual observers. So it looks like he could potentially be back for this weekend's game. But having said that, he is reluctant to make changes to a winning team. And Sander Berge, who's come in, he had a shaky game against Aston Villa, and I think there was a lot of concern from Fulham fans. But after that game, he's been absolutely solid, absolutely mustard ever since, just improving his levels of performances ever since. So, and you've seen Harry Wilson. Harry Wilson in the last couple of games has come on around the 80th minute, and he's bagged 3 goals. I think the stats will tell you that he has the best goals per minute ratio in the Premier League this season. He's scoring a goal every 24 minutes. So I
Wow.
think for Wolves fans, you'd hope he stays on the bench, because he might score one instead of a hat-trick. But he scored again in midweek for Wales, so he's absolutely flying. So it's a great problem to have for Marco Silva at the minute, because you almost want to have he's got 15 guys, 15, 16 guys that could easily be starting, but he can obviously only start 11. So it's great options to have players like Wilson, like Adama Traore, who you'll know well. You know what Adama Traore can do with 20 minutes to go, and he's up against tired fullbacks. It's not what they want to see, is it? With his him warming up with his baby oil on the sidelines, is it? But
no. Is he? He and Jimenez are both fit for this game, right? Is that?
Yeah, they're both fit, but Adama Traore's been restricted to substitute appearances the last couple of games. Reece Nelson, who's on loan from Arsenal, he's come into the fold. He's taken Adama Traore's place, so I would imagine that he would stick with that. Adama Traore will probably come on the last 15, 20 minutes, depending on how the game is going. Let's look at the game now. Who do you think are the key personnel in Wolves' fortunes for this game if they are to get a positive result?
Cunha. It's not a secret that if anything happens to Cunha this season, Wolves are in even more trouble, because he is like the linchpin right now. Strand Larsen is scoring. I love him. We signed him in the summer. He's a great striker. Plays for Norway, the next most famous Norwegian striker. And he looks, he looks really sharp and dangerous as well. But Cunha playing in that number 10 off him, being able to roam from deep and run at people. Now that he's got a proper number 9 in front of him, because last season he didn't really have a proper number 9 ahead of him, and he was doing that number 9 role, and he's not a number 9. But having Cunha now to roam as a number 10 and just run at people and cause danger. I mean, and I don't know if you saw his goal against Southampton. He's a beautiful goal from range. He's got so much in his locker, and he's not always as good. Like a lot of great attacking players, not necessarily great off the ball. He can not necessarily track back and give everything, but you almost don't want him to, because he's so dangerous going forward. If he's having a day, it can be a great day.
Yeah, I do like Cunha, and I think what's impressive is he had a good season, didn't he, last season, netting a dozen times as well. And the fact that he's backed that up, he's gone on to score, I think he's scored a handful, 5 goals so far in a team that's struggling towards the bottom end of the table. So it's shown that he can cut it at this level in the Premier League, not just do it over the course of one season. If we're looking at Fulham, I thought the 3 behind the striker in the last game were absolutely electric. So that's Nelson, Smith Rowe. Well, Smith Rowe doesn't necessarily always play behind the striker, because he plays Andreas Pereira and Smith Rowe in almost dual 8 positions. But Smith Rowe had his best game in the Fulham shirt in that game, got on the score sheet, had another one ruled out, marginal offside. And Alex Iwobi as well. Well, Alex Iwobi for me is probably Fulham's player of the season. He would be if I was voting on Fulham's player of the season, it would be Alex Iwobi. He can play left, he can play right, he can play through the middle. He's such a great tool to have, that versatility for a manager. He's a manager's dream, and he's been absolutely superb so far. So those are the key personnel, and defensively they've been good as well. They probably not kept the clean sheets they would like. They kept the clean sheet in the last game, but again, XG. You look at XG against, they're right up there as well. Probably, I think, maybe behind Liverpool for teams that restrict the opposition to sort of clear-cut chances. So, with that being said, what is your score prediction for this encounter?
Oh, this is a tough one. But to be honest, I will pretty much snatch your hand off for something like a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw. I think there's goals in it. Like you said, again, I don't like that kind of stat always either, because I think it sometimes is not always that clear. But in terms of your XG and your chances, as you said, I think there's goals in the game. If you get set pieces, I think you will maybe get your first set piece goal. We are that bad from set pieces, so that's where there's going to be goals from in terms of conceding for us. So I will, but we are, like I said, we are all just as capable of scoring. And anyone who's actually watched a bunch of, a fair bit of us will see there is actually a lot of danger there going forward. So if I think I can see a goals draw, 1-1, 2-2. Either of those, I'll take it. I'll take the point so we can go away and play some of these teams around us and try and get a few more.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at the fixture last season, it was a highly entertaining game, wasn't it? I think it was a Monday Night Football 5-goal thriller, which Fulham just managed to emerge victorious. I think it was a stoppage time penalty from Willian at the time. I think Wolves will score. But looking at the defensive record, I think they can be got at, and I think Fulham have the players that are capable of exploiting that. If they can get Smith Rowe, Iwobi, Reece Nelson running at that Wolves defence, and I think they'll cause them havoc. And I think Fulham will emerge 3-1 victors for this game, but I think they also must guard against complacency, because there'd probably be some Fulham fans looking at their position in the league and thinking, ooh, home game against Wolves. Wolves are struggling in the table. That's a game on paper. You've got a good chance of winning. And then you start getting ahead of yourself thinking, if this team loses, if this team draws, you might end the evening, you might end the day 4th or 5th in the league table. So it's important for Marco Silva to guard against complacency. You know, I'm sure he will. He's been in this business long enough. He's managed in the Premier League for long enough. So I'm sure he'll do that. And if Fulham play to the levels that we've seen recently, then I think they will emerge victorious. Any final thoughts on this fixture?
Just that, a bit like you said, I think you're more than capable of taking all 3 points. But yeah, I wouldn't be complacent. Wolves have some strong players. You know, we took Man City right to the wire again this season, and they only won through a very well discussed VAR decision. You know, and we've conceded a few VAR issues again this season. Have let us down, being the only team to vote against VAR in the summer as well, and it all seems to come back to bite us in the bum. So we are more dangerous than our position, I think, you know, shows. So yeah, don't underestimate us. Even if, you know, I think it'll be a tough day, whatever the result. I think it's going to be another battle.
Yeah, I definitely can see there being goals. I definitely can see it being an entertaining game. There we have it. That'll do it for today's crossover special. Thank you to Chris from the Daily Wolves team for joining me today. We'll catch you all on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.